Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, make us worthy, O Lord, to say thankfully, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. In Christ Jesus our Lord, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, now and forever. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. We continue in our study. Then we are in the third session out of 16. I'm going to go over the quiz first. Let me go back and pick up the last session, and I'm going to do only the questions that was missed by many people. So let me find that again here. It's OT2. And I'm going to share that with you too. OT2. Can we say it? Can we see this? Okay. Let's go to the questions. We said the narrative parts of the Torah. Remember we talked about that. The Torah has 5 books. The narrative is in Genesis, Exodus, up to chapter 24. And then we pick up the rest of the narrative in Numbers from chapter 11 to the end. So the narrative parts of the Torah include C, Genesis, Exodus, chapter 1 to 24 for Exodus, and the first 10 chapters of Numbers is wrong. So we fixed this one. So that should be the except the first 10 chapters of Numbers. So the final answer to that would be except the first 10 chapters of Numbers. This was edited. Okay? So this is the question. The answer is the C, but with the correction, except the first 10 chapters of Numbers. God created plants on the 3rd day. The book of Genesis includes major events. When you hear the title or the heading of a question, answer it before you read the answers. That's the best way to do it. Answer the question before you read this will help you organize your brain. When you receive the answers, you can pick the right one immediately. So what's the answer to the major events? We have 4 major events. We have 3 covenants and 4 patriarchs. Major events: creation, fall, flood, nations. Creation, fall, flood, nations. What are the 3 covenants? The covenant through Adam, the covenant through Noah, and the covenant through Abraham. Those are 3 covenants God made in the book of Genesis, not in the Torah. Torah has also the covenant with Israel. That's in the Exodus, but we're talking about Genesis here. And what are the 4 patriarchs? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. So let's read the answers. We talk about 3 big major events, covenants and patriarchs. So the covenant with the nation, is that included? What are the covenants we have? The covenant with Adam, that's the covenant with a couple and humanity. The covenant with a nation will be made in Exodus, where God's going to stand all the people in front of the mountain and make covenant with them. That's not in Genesis. That's in Exodus. The division of people into nations, is that one of the major events? Yes, it is. The first prophet? No, there is no prophets. There are patriarchs in Genesis, but no prophets. The first prophet is going to appear in Exodus, and the definition of a prophet is a person who speaks to people on behalf of God. The first king, not really even in the Torah. You're going to have the first king, the very first king would come in the book of 1 Samuel, when Samuel the prophet is going to ordain Saul as a king. So the answer, the correct answer is the division of people into nations, which will come in chapter 10 when they start talking about or building the Tower of Babel. Okay, in the creation narrative, that's another one that people had missed too. Resolve the problem of emptiness first, then the problem of chaos. This depends on your understanding of the two words, and we said that the Genesis, even in translation, they go, and the earth was, what come first? Formless or empty? Was it formless and empty or empty and formless? Taho Baho, that's the Hebrew words. So which one came first? What is he going to do depending on that arrangement? Is he going to fill void or create domains? He's going to make rooms first or he's going to fill rooms? Create domains. So which one is the chaos that's going to be solved by creating domains or the emptiness? Chaos, right? If this church is not divided into altar, sanctuary, and foyer or narthex, it will be chaotic. You know, you might have people with their dogs standing in this place. You might have deacons standing in the back and the abuna. You might have people. So because we have divided this into three, it made order, right? It made an order. You cannot have everything mixed up. So the first thing God does is create domains, which solves the problem of emptiness or chaos. Chaos. So Tahu is chaos, Bahu is empty. So he resolved the problem of emptiness first, then the problem of chaos. Is that correct or incorrect? Incorrect. Because I said creating domain answered the question of chaos, not the problem of emptiness. Again, think about it this way. You build a house. You go ahead and buy your appliances and put them in your junkyard that you bought for a piece of land. You get your washer and kitchen and stuff and then your living room, and you just spread them on this piece of land that you bought. Or you first build walls and organize this space. What you do first? You organize or you buy stuff and stack it there? Organize. So the problem that has to be resolved before the emptiness is organize is against. Organize to solve what? The form, the chaos, right? When something has no shape, we first shape it and then we fill it. So the first one is wrong. That God does not solve the problem of emptiness first. The seventh day complement the first day. We said that every day in Tahu Bahu complement each other, right? First day is complemented by which day? The fourth. And the second day is complemented by the fifth. And the third day is complemented by, remember, first day was light. What's the fourth day? Lights. So first day he said, let there be light. And the fourth day, what did he say? Let there be greater light and lesser lights. Because in the first day he divided the day and the darkness into night and day. He said the sun will control the day and the moon and the stars will control the night. So the first day and the fourth day is almost like together. And the second day God creates the sky and separate the sky from the sea. And on the fifth day what does he do? What would be in the sky? What would be in the sea? Birds, sea creatures, and we said we added a very good bonus in the fifth day, which is dinosaurs. We talk about them today. Dinosaurs is a big thing that we have to study today. And then the third day, God said, let land appear and let be vegetations, trees and grass. So what happens on the sixth day? So the third day is going to be complemented by, so God created the first 3 days to be domains, night and day, then sky and sea, and then land and sea. This is how he divided in 3 days. But then he filled the first day, the first 2 domains, day and night, by lights. Something for the night, something for the day. These are the rooms. Night and day are two rooms. Think of them that way. But God filled the first room with the sun, the second room with the moon and stars. The third domain that he created is the sky. And on the fifth day, he created birds to fill the sky. And there was a sea. He created sea creatures. And then the bonus, are the dinosaurs that he created to fill the sky, the Archaeopteryxes. And, there's a lot of flying dinosaurs. And the sea dinosaurs, some of the hugest animal that lived on Earth are dinosaurs of the sea. And then there's dinosaurs of the land. So you have those. But then in the sixth day, he created land. He let the land appear from under the sea. And the scientists think it was the volcanic activity, a lot of volcanic activities. They speak about it in details. It's really beautiful to think about it. They actually said, what was there before land appeared? It was basaltic crust, the shell around the boiling core of the earth. And that basaltic crust was broken by lava coming from under it. And that lava mixing with seawater made granite. The continents we live on, that we move on, is made out of granite. Granite flowed because it's a less denser material than basaltic. Basaltic is very heavy. If you hold a small rock of basaltic rock in your hand and put the similar volume, a similar size one, in your other hand, you will feel like this is almost 2 times heavier. The basaltic is heavier than the granite because granite is lighter. That is lava coming out from under the sea, mixing with sea salt, and making this new rock that's tougher than basaltic. It can resist the waves. So that made the continents. And there on the continents, God said, let plants appear. So you have 3 days for chaos, 3 days for material. But the chaos had to be resolved first. The seventh day has nothing to do with any of them. 1 corresponds to 4, 2 to 5, 3 to 6. But what about 7? Has no counter day. That say, seventh day is by itself. A very special day. Number C. So now we said, number A is wrong. B is wrong. Land appeared and plants were created on the third day. Agree? Yes. And just for you to remember, why did Jesus have to rise? And we say it in the creed. On the third day, he rose from the dead. According to the scriptures. What scriptures? Why he had to rise on the third day? Guess why? Answer this question and you will know. When was the first life appearing on earth? The first life ever. The plants. And when did the plants when they were created? Third day. So if we're going to create life again, we're going to have to prepare for it by 2 days. And then on the third day, this new life will come. As if there was an old creation and it's gone. And now Christ becomes a new creation. We're starting over for a creation that will never die again. I'm studying stuff that's very interesting. They say, the Big Bang says this. This is like a side note. The Big Bang says the following. I don't know if you have heard about the Big Bang or read about it or studied anything about it. That the universe is expanding. It's getting bigger. The galaxies are traveling away from each other. And they say, if we look backwards and bring this picture back, they are studying this, and they said the whole universe was like a point of few millimeters. That's crazy, right? Few millimeters that had no material, nothing. What was there is energy. It's extremely dense. Extremely dense. You can think about it like the whole universe in 2-3 millimeters. And this point was no material. There is no electrons, there is no nucleus, there is no atoms, there is nothing. It's just a very condensed energy. And one moment, it exploded. They call it the Big Bang. And this terrible explosion brought about the universe. And immediately, very quickly, this energy started to turn into subatomic things, neutrons, protons, electrons, and they started to condense to form atoms. Atoms started to condense to become an element. What's the first element they think existed? helium. And after helium came hydrogen. And then after hydrogen, they kept building up, you know, the periodic table. They kept building up from 1 to 2 to 3 atoms, etc. So I'm talking about protons and electrons. So when you think about it, just think about that. When you shrink that back, they go back to energy. That's what happens. If you go back in time, it becomes energy. Think about Jesus, which is crazy. He had a body like us. He was touchable. They could kill him. But then when he rose from the dead, he could go through the walls and come and be touchable. What's that? What's happening here? They call this event horizon, singularity. That's terms from physicists who study this. They say it is an ability to be an energy and to be material when you want. Some people who did, they call this quantum physics. They said when they studied this, they said Jesus had a perfect mimic or example of a universe starting over again. This is crazy, but just for you to think about it. That's why when you're going to see in science fiction movies, they might mimic that and say some people have the ability to shrink and go through the walls and come from the other side and be material again. This is quantum stuff. And they said they can't explain that it's crazy, because there's no one who can have the ability to shrink material back into, or bring material back into waves. So land appeared and plants were created on the third day because Jesus was the life. He had to rise on the third day. Land, animals, and birds were made on the fifth day. No, fifth day was birds, sea animals, and dinosaurs. To be made in God's image means, I don't think that anybody missed this. The seventh day meant the first covenant of God with humans was made with Adam alone. Both a covenant of marriage and adoption meant only for humans, none of the above. First of all, it's not meant only for humans, because through humans, God had a covenant also with the earth and the animals and the plants and everything. They were in dominion, so they were responsible for. It's almost like you go to confiscate a house or punish someone, and in their house they have pets. So you might say, I'm going to take the pets, put them in a shelter, or give them someone else, but that's going to affect the pets. So you're dealing with the house. It includes everything in the household, and the household of Adam was earth. Made with Adam alone? No, because we said this last time. It was both covenants. It was a covenant of adoption and a covenant of marriage. The two were linked together. The relationship they had with God had to do with themselves. We'll see this in the fall. As long as they maintained the relationship with God, their relationship to each other was maintained. That's why in a Christian marriage we say it is crazy to think that the couple who comes to be married in the church are going to do it away from God. God is involved with it in every single minute and in all the sense in the world, that they are actually committed to one another and God at the same time. So it's both a covenant of marriage and adoption? Yes, that's what it is. Okay? Any other questions here that we missed? How many rivers came out from the Garden of Eden? We made this into how many heads of rivers? We said that out of Eden came, it's one river that goes into 4 heads. So it's 4 heads. Number 9, the creation narrative has many liturgical references. When I say liturgical, it has to do with the church and the priest. They include all except God acting in ways reminiscent to remind us of a priest. Yes, he was separating things. He blessed and sanctified. He kept a day for himself with us to maintain the relationship. The father has to sit with his family over a table to eat dinner together. They usually, in the classical way, you come on Sunday and you eat a dinner together. Or you go to your grandpa and grandma to enjoy their company. That day is the day that you sit together. That's the day of the Lord. That's we come here and we enjoy a table with God. The separation between clean and unclean animals, did this happen in the creation? No. It's going to happen in the flood. You're going to see that. In the flood, God's going to talk about clean and unclean animals, but not in creation. The special place of the Sabbath, yes. The similarity between the creation narrative and the tabernacle, yes. We talked about that. Okay? So these are the questions, and the Hebrew words, you had no problem dealing with them. So I'm going to stop sharing this one, and we'll move into the next one. The creation narrative and the fall. That's again, we continue with the creation and talk a little bit about science. And I want you to be wise and informed when we talk about science and creation, because there's a lot of confusion over that, really, too much confusion, and comes from different mistakes. And today, I don't want to make a detailed explanation of the book of Genesis as a scientific book, but I'm going to give you the points where people get confused, okay? There's points that make everybody gets confused. So let us talk about those points. So the questions we have, the inquiry questions. What does the creation account say to a paleontologist? Who's a paleontologist? What's paleontology? The study of fossils or the beginnings of the earth, the formation of the earth, and it is life. It's not like archaeology. Archaeology is a study of what? Ancient civilization through digging, talking about civilizations. But paleontology, it's about nature. How did it come to be, especially our earth, and what's happening on it. What's the meaning of taneen and nakedness? We're going to study these in details. What happened in the fall, and what are its consequences? Cain, Abel, and Seth, 2 genealogies. So we read chapters 3 and 5. And now we're going to start the first part. What does the creation account say to a paleontology? Let's correct some misnotions, some wrong ideas that makes people get confused. Since the early ages of the church, there were ongoing trials to estimate the age of the earth using the genealogy charts of the Bible. People had tried that. We have genealogy charts. Okay? There were also debates on the way God made the creation. How did he make it? Did he make it instantaneously? When he said, let there, something happen immediately, or it took time? And how much time? There were also debates about the way God made the creation. The Bible is the record of history of salvation, and not a science book. We have, especially today, in the age we live in, the age of information and science, we got used to a certain way of reading textbooks and science books and history books. Do we expect the same from the Bible? Should we expect the Bible to talk to us like our science books in school? And the reason why we shouldn't is that because the Bible's main concern is not to teach us science. That's not what the Bible is about. But there are textbooks and scientists who wrote textbooks for science, and we look for those for science. We should not expect the Holy Scriptures to answer specific scientific and historic questions, because the Bible is the record of God's relationship with His people, that's the covenants, and is concerned with different set of questions that's different than science. So what are the questions that the Bible is concerned with, that science is not concerned with? And what questions science is concerned with, the Bible is not concerned with. Okay? So you can say this, I can say this to you like this, okay? So I go to a person who works in a factory, and I tell him, you're working over this big machine here that has buttons and handles, all right? And I can ask him, how do you do what you're doing? So he said, I get this piece of metal, maybe it is a big pistol to make pots and pans. I guess the sheets of metal, I put it under this big, huge arm that comes down, and it goes with a great force, and it pushes that metal sheet into a pan. Then I ask him a second question and say, okay, tell me the mechanics behind this. What this simple workman would say. I don't know. I know this is what I should do, and when I do it, and I do it correctly, safely, I get a pot out of it. But I don't know how it works. You can ask who? The engineer, who knows how to fix it, who knows how it was made. And I go to the engineer and I said, where do you get this big stuff that you made the pistol from? What kind of metal? I said, I don't know. I only know what the mechanics of it and how to fix it, but to make it, you have to go back to the manufacturer. So it seems like for humans, they cannot put everything in one place, otherwise you will expect it to be endless. So the set of questions that we ask the Bible, and the Bible should answer, is usually why and who. Who made the universe? Can I ask the science that question? Will the science answer who made the universe? Absolutely not. Why did he make the universe? Would the science answer that? But what can I ask? Who can I ask? I can ask the Bible that, but who can I ask to give me the how? How does plants use sunlight to make food, to make starch, to make grain leaves, to make fruits? Who would answer this? If I go to the Bible, would the Bible answer this? So how is given to science. Who and why is given to the Bible. So, and then you can actually also ask when for science too. And we're going to have to talk about this a little bit. The scriptures are concerned with the why and who, while science is concerned with when and how questions. The author of the Bible and the creator of the universe is the same. He's the one creator of heaven and earth. Therefore, there should be no conflict between the Bible and ongoing true scientific discoveries. Sometimes, and this is happening more and more, atheists go into science to answer a question that they cannot answer. But they make it believable that this is true. So they say, we discovered evolution. There is no God. How did you know that? We discovered that things come from each other. Species develop and become more species, and they call it speciation, to make more species. And because of speciation, we can tell you for sure there is no God. Is this a true conclusion? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I'm going to tell you the argument for that. I'm just going to go quickly. We're not in a debate here over. I'm just trying to tell you how people look at the account of Genesis, and we need to know that. So if the same author who wrote the Bible is the one who made the universe, there should be any conflict between the two? If I'm the one who made the car, and someone came to study the car, and I wrote you a catalog of it, is there going to be any conflict between the catalog, the hand manual of the car, and the car itself? If somebody looks at the car and find the manual is not matching, he's going to complain and say, you're writing a manual for some other car. So if God wrote the Bible, and the Bible is not the manual of the universe, it's the manual of me. It's a manual about me in relationship to God. It's not about the universe. There should be no conflict. It's a side point. But therefore, we should not expect them to answer questions that should be answered by sincere scientific studies. The Bible should not answer those questions. I'm talking about also the fathers of the church. The fathers of the church, some people would say, did they say anything about the Genesis account? The fathers of the church from the first centuries did not have the scientific discoveries we had today. St. Augustine many times said, I don't know. We should not making jumps into conclusions. So you don't really depend on the fathers of the church to answer scientific questions. I can't expect them. If the Bible didn't talk about it, why should I think the fathers of the church would talk about it? Do you understand what I'm saying? So neither the Bible nor the fathers are science. Science is looking at God through his work. And it comes with limitations. And those limitations has to be respected. Now, regarding the creation narrative, many different approaches has been taken. So when you look at Christians, and especially in this country and in England especially, you would have those following. And I'm going to ask about those ones. Be careful now, because those people might be, the first set is the Christian group, the Christian and the Jews. Regarding the creation narrative, many different approaches had been taken. You can group them into two groups, the theistic and the atheistic. We talked about theistic. What's theism? What's atheism? A is negation. So from the creation narrative, people can say, I believe in God, and I believe that he is the creator of everything. And the other group would say, I don't believe in God, I believe that he doesn't exist, and I look at everything that exists as spontaneous, came by itself. We don't have to have a God or a superpower or any. Atheistic means he doesn't believe in anything supernatural that made the creation. It had to come by spontaneous generation. You understand what I'm saying? So these are the two main groups. When you go back to the theistic, the one who believe in God, it gets a little bit complicated. Just listen to this and understand what I'm saying. There is old earth group, there is a young earth group, and there is a gap theory group 3. Old earth, young earth, and a gap theory. The 3 groups. What does the old earth say? They take the approach that a day is not a 24-hour. It's an age of many, maybe millions of years. I think, and the church doesn't have a very dogmatic stand on this, but we, since Pope Shenouda is the first one who talked about this, we are of the type that says we think it is as age. The day is an age. I'm going to give you as a reason why that's the case. But many fundamentalists in this country take the very hard approach of saying it was a 24-hour days, and they refuse any other way. So this is, we are old earth, and they are young earth. So if it is only 1 week of 24 hours each day, you would finish creation in a week of days. And then start the genealogy of Adam. So the earth is actually to them is how old? If you count the genealogies, there is a little bit discrepancy between the Septuagint and the Masoretic. The Masoretic puts it a little younger even, but the Septuagint would say at least 5,500 years between the creation and Christ. So the earth actually is 5,500 years. The old earth would say absolutely not. That doesn't make sense. So they take the 24-hour day approach, but the old earth take it a day age approach. Each day represents a long period of time. The old earth, they can divide again. They say, and God used evolution to do it. There is no really hard proof of that. There's no hard evidence. We don't follow that. That evolution is the way that God did things over long periods of time. We would have to say how this could happen over time. I'm going to tell you the arguments against it again. So the evolutionary theistic old earth would say God created using evolution as a process. It doesn't necessarily has to be wrong from the principal point of view, because let us say your car is a Honda, and this car was made in an assembly line in Ohio, usually. Went through the machines. Every machine did a little part, and then in the end they assemble it together. There's another guy down the road, he does it by hand. He gets the pieces, and he hammers them, and he does all the work by hand, like Rolls-Royce. Okay, this is Honda, and this is Honda. Does it matter which way it was made by? At the end you would have, and it has a person who made it. You get that? As long as evolution is used as a process and not a God. God is the creator. Either evolution is used or it's not used. He used evolution, okay. He didn't use evolution, it's okay. We're open. If science said today everything came up, and there is a little language in the first chapter that says, and God said, let the sea produce. What does that mean? Let the sea produce means he gives vitality to the sea to start making things. If there is an evolutionary process in that, fine. The special creation insists that everything God had made by itself, when they insist on or they highlight the words according to its kind, means God has in mind kinds, species, and he created everything in his kind. We don't have a hard scientific answer or a theological answer for those. It's left, and maybe God will reveal to us sometime how did he do these things. But for sure, when it came to human, he didn't do that. Because when he came to human, he said what? Let us make man in our image. He didn't say let the earth produce humans. There was an interference by God himself. He took it personally to make man, and he made man from the clay. So there is a specific hint. So when somebody says to me, we came from apes, I say, no, that doesn't fit the Bible. You can tell me apes came from protozoa, that's fine. But to tell me humans came from another animal, this was actually intentionally put as God intending to make man from clay. And the evolutionary would argue again and say, clay through a lizard, clay through an ostrich. Our ancestors were plants, clay through the plants. That's too much stretching it. Again, the church doesn't have any hard position on these things, so don't go arguing to death against it. We know for sure that God created everything. That is the statement that has to be. Any explanation that excludes God is against the church. Got it? Okay. The young earth, and I told about the young earth, they approach. The gap theory is interesting. They said, okay, wait a second. We can reconcile the two. God actually made it in a week, but between the first day and the second day, there was a gap. So he made a creation, and this creation was annihilated on the second night, before the second day comes. And he started over in the second day. So they said, there's two creations with a long gap in between, so there's billions of years before the first creation and second creation, and this adds the two together. So God really created the whole thing in 7 days, 24 hours, but between the first day and second day, there is a lot of time. So you can take the two together and make them into one theory. Inserts a long time period between the first and the second verses of the first chapter of Genesis. Not the first day and second day, between the first verse and the second verse. So I don't confuse you, because it says, in the beginning God created heaven and earth, and then he said, and the earth was tahu bahu, and then he said, let there be light. So he's starting over. I say, again, that's assuming that the narrative is repeating itself. That's not the case. We don't believe that. The church did not make a dogmatic statement on the subject of the age of the earth, nor on the specific process of creating different species, except that the explanation should affirm and is compatible with God as the creator. When evolutionary explanation excludes the creator, then it contradicts the first statement of the creed and the account of Genesis. Okay? If God wanted to use evolution as a method to do it, it's fine. The young earth people who was very hard-headed about it said, no, evolution excludes God. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to. One added piece of information, there's something called macroevolution. Is species turning into another species. Invertebrate becomes vertebrate. Sea creatures becomes amphibian. Amphibian becomes land animals. So these hierarchical shifts or jumps in the creation is called macroevolution. But there is microevolution. You always hear about the giraffe, how the giraffe necks were very short, and then as the sources of the giraffe became scarce, they started to only the long-necked giraffe to survive, and they mate together, they make longer and longer necks until eventually you have that giraffe with a long neck. That's fine. It's okay. They call that microevolution. The giraffe did not come from a rabbit. That's fine. That's called microevolution. Evolution within the species. We don't have any problem with microevolution. Macroevolution, it's still questionable. They try very hard to prove it, but there's no set of proofs. Of course, the atheistic person is jumping on it and say, yes, we have proofs. If you study biology, and I hope you did, and you study the details of biology, cell biology, and DNA, and all that stuff, you will come to be having a hard time accepting this. Because the amount of details that happens in the human body, for each one step to take an evolutionary jump, it means infinite amount of years. All the people who studied medicine, if they think about it for a second and they know exactly what they have read and what they have studied, and it took them like 4 or 5 years to finish, they know. They know it is really hard. I'm not saying this is a dogma. I'm just telling you my opinion. If I go and study all the tissues of the body and all the organs and all the organ systems and all the complicated stuff that happens in a one cell, one of the things that blows my mind, after the cell divides, when the single cell divides, it goes into a self-examination process they call checkpoint. What happens in the checkpoint? It checks its own DNA and organelles. And if the cell finds a big fault with it, what happens? The cell commits suicide. Just think about that. Just think about, this is not evolutionary, by the way. There is no selection here. There's no an outside danger that pushes that cell to die. The cell dies from within. This is crazy. And it deploys all its enzymes and everything that the cell has to break down its own guts and give itself to another cell to use. Just think about that. That's one, I'm just talking about one single piece of information. I didn't give you the whole rest of it. About DNA and how it actually transcribes itself into a messenger RNA. Then that messenger RNA goes outside the nucleus to go and be translated. There is a code. So the material of life is written before it is actually expressed. So there is a lot going on that evolution cannot explain. How many years we have for that? They said, since dinosaur extinction, 65 million years. So when did the monkeys appear that we are supposed to be part of our ancestry? Way after that. Okay? Okay, let's go and study the atheistic and spontaneous appearance of the universe and life. Natural selection of similar mechanisms is responsible for the appearance of life and new species. When they discovered DNA, Watson and Crick model, they said, oh, we think it has to be the mutations and crossbreeding. It's not natural selection anymore, because natural selection is a pressure from outside. How can you press something to change its DNA? Survival, yes, it's going to have to be one mutation. How many mutations happen in a whole generation? And how many mutations are good? Anyway, I'm just talking too much science and I will need to cut it so we can focus on the Bible. What does the creation narrative offer to the scientist? The first one says, bara. In the beginning, God, Yahweh, bara. That's the Hebrew word. What does bara mean? When you look up bara in the dictionary, in the Strongs, it says create, can be creator, choose, make, cut down, dispatch, done. There's many meanings. But when the word bara is used to mean to create, listen to this. The only subject that can be used with it is God. We use create here. Oh, he's a creative person. Oh, did you create this beautiful job? No, this is not a bara word that they can use in Hebrew. When the Hebrew person says bara, the subject who is using it as a verb is God, has to be God. You can use it in other ways. You can use it as to cut down a tree, or to dispatch, or to be done with something. You can use it with anybody, but when it comes to create, it has to be God. The next word that I want you to get used to is called creation ex nihilo. What does creation ex nihilo means? It's a Latin word, is to create out of nothing. Out of nothing. There was nothing. So evolution has to tell us that there is something that evolved. To evolve is to come from something. Something comes from another thing. But creation ex nihilo means to create out of nothing. This is an agreement among scientists. There's an agreement about the Big Bang Theory. I just told you that the universe at one point did not exist. All of a sudden you have this one singularity, they call it, of a few millimeters that the Big Bang comes out of. And they keep telling you there was like there's a huge amount of energy. You can find something like this in what they call the black hole. But then all of a sudden you have four forces coming out of it. The big force, the magnetic force, the gravitational force, and all the four forces, I forgot the fourth one, they have to kind of one by one split from this singularity. And as they split, material starts to form. This Big Bang says, basically, there was a time that the universe did not exist. Okay, good. Once scientists, there is no disagreement about that, by the way, even the atheists. So the big question comes, so how did the universe come to exist? All right, let me just ask this question in a different way. If something doesn't exist, can it exist itself? There has to be somebody else or something else, who made it to exist? So once you say that the universe did not exist at one point, you actually has assured the presence of an external power, a God, a higher power that actually worked on the universe to exist. So Big Bang Theory supports the Genesis account of what? Of bara, creation ex nihilo, means God had created things from nothing. So the theory affirms a beginning for the universe. They came up with many ideas, crazy ideas. Said there are actually multiple universes. They keep circling in and out of each other. And they said even that, according to the data we have today, they have to have a beginning. So there is no way to escape that. The universe had a beginning. So the Creator has to will the existence from nothing. There is nothing else that we can say about this. The night and the day. What is the Hebrew word for day? Now we're going to talk specifically about the old earth, young earth. What's a day? What's the Hebrew word for a day? Very familiar one. Yom. Yom. So that's the word for Hebrew for day. So when you read the word Yom in the Bible, how do we know what it means? We go through all the Bible from beginning to end, the Hebrew Bible, and see how the Hebrew people used it. And you would see that Yom has, if you read the dictionary, it has almost a whole page of different meanings. What are the different meanings? I wrote it down in the references here. It says afternoon, age, all, always, amount, battle, birthday, chronicles, completely, continually, course, daily, daily the days, day of the days, day that the period, days every day, daylight, they call it the heat of the day, and it goes on and on and on and on. What does it mean? That this day word does not mean 24 hours. It does not mean 24 hours. When people insist it has to be 24 hours, they are not giving you the right understanding of the word Yom. I'll give you a very clear proof. When God told Adam, the day, Yom, you eat of it, you shall surely die. And the father of the church commented on this. He said, what is he talking about? What day he's talking about? It's actually Adam's day, which is his age. His age was not supposed to have an end. Do you understand? So that death happened in the age of Adam. And the fathers even went to say, that's why he didn't finish 1,000 years. Because 1,000 years for God is a day. But I'm talking about the age of Adam. In his age, he would die. So he would not continue to be forever. That he would be limited, that his day will finish, and there will be a night. And then the beginning of chapter 2. Listen to this. This is the beginning, chapter 2, how it begins in Genesis. This is the beginnings of heaven and earth, the day the Lord made them. The Yom, that the Lord made them. Did God make them in a day? There was the age, the period of time that God had made the heaven and earth. So this is the word day. You say the day of King David. When Jesus speaks about it is your hour. What is the hour? It's the hour and the power of darkness. What's the hour and the power of darkness? It took them how long to kill him? From the time they captured him to the time he gave up the spirit, it's about 20 hours, or maybe 18 hours. It's not one single hour. So this is the language the Bible used, the time, day and hour. Okay? The first time this word appears in Genesis, it appeared in Genesis 1:5. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. Among the many meanings of the word Yom, day, there are age, period, year, years, as well as daylight or a full day. It can be taken to mean 24-hour day, or a whole aeon, for all what we concern about. Or period, as in the day the Lord God made the earth and heavens. In the first chapter, it is the period of time during which a specific creation or creations were made, when God was active. Jesus is going to explain that we read it today. He said, we have to work while it is still day. What does it mean we have to work while it's still day? You know that human beings work when it is day, usually, unless you're working at night for a shift or something. But usually people work at day. So the day is the time where we are actively working. What happens at night? We sleep. What happens at night? Thieves come to steal. Death comes at night. A lot of things that happen at night. The Bible actually speaks about the day and the night in a different way than we think about them as 24 hours. Let's not go far. What's the polar day? Polar day. When you go to the North Pole and call it a day, what would it be? How long is the polar day? Anybody knows? Not North Pole, South Pole. Have you seen the March of the Penguins? No? It's a very good movie if you want to watch. It talks about South Pole penguins, real documentary. What's a polar day? And what's a polar night? How long is a polar day? Anybody knows? It's the top of the axis of the Earth rotation. So the Earth, and for a day and night, it turns like this, and this is the axis, it turns like this. But then during the seasons, it tilts like this. So the Earth goes like this, and then from season to season, it goes like that. So what's a polar day? In the summer, the North Pole is facing the sun with an angle. So if you're in the North Pole, and you can see this on YouTube if you want, you say, lapse time North Pole day, lapse time North Pole night. What would you see? If you're standing on the North Pole exactly, and you're looking, in a day, you would see the sun here. And as the day goes by, the sun starts to move like that, like that, like that, like that, like that, like that. Circle, all the way it comes back to, in 24 hours it comes back to the same point, and it continues again. How long does the sun do that? All what it does, the sun, is actually go up a little bit and come back down. So goes up and keeps turning. Every day is a circle. How long does the sun do this for? Give me a number. A week, a month, 2 months? 6 months. But what happens when the 6 months finish? The sun keeps dropping down back to the place where it came from, and then what disappears under the horizon. And for 6 months, what happens? You have absolute night. So what's the polar day? How long is a polar day? 6 months. How long is a polar night? So now you have it. You don't have to go back or forward or to think about anything, to think about what a day can be. According to the definition, a day is light and the night is, and God called the light day and he called the darkness night. So what happened? We're going to have to look into this again. So in the creation days, God created things. What happened in the night? There was no creation. Actually, there was destruction. There was annihilation. There was extinction in the night. And we start again a new day with a new creation, a new atmosphere, a new everything. Let's go into the next piece here. So I can stop. So the night is a period of darkness. The day is a period of light. The darkness is a time during which no creation was made. Elsewhere in the Bible, just look, focus on the Bible now. Night means what? I'm going to jump ahead and give you a little bit of hints about what we're going to study later. Tell me about a night that was coupled with destruction. Should be very simple. The 9th plague in Egypt, what was it? A darkness. And even the darkness was so much, they said that God told Moses, they will feel it. The darkness can be felt, can be touched. Apparently, I can think of it this way, they cannot see their own noses. It's so dark that even the light they put on the sun didn't really make any difference. It doesn't make any difference if you open your eyes or close them. This is how dark it was in Egypt. The 9th plague. What was the 10th plague? The death of the firstborn happened while the darkness is still on. The darkness did not let go until the death of the firstborn was finished, completed. Then the sun rose and the light came back. So what is death coupled with in the Bible? Death. Night is coupled with death and destruction. That's why Jesus said it's your hour and it is your hour and the power of darkness. Meaning what? You're going to have to put him to death. He's the light of the world. And then immediately before he dies, what happens? As he's struggling to gasp for air and about to give up the spirit, what's happening in the place? It's dark. So in the Bible itself, the description of night is the description of death and chaos, back to chaos. Because the first thing God created before he does any other creation was light. In the current information from paleontology reveals, listen to this. I want you to be aware of this. Go up, and you can look it up, and I'm going to, maybe I show you something here. Go look up National Geographic and the Earth age, and there's a chart. There is 6 periods that is brimming with life, and there's 5 periods of destruction. Believe it or not. Okay? No, because why? We have, the first night is before the first day, so we're not counting that. That's the darkness that was beginning of everything. God said, let there be light. But since the light came, there's 5. The second night, the third night, the fourth night, the fifth night, the sixth night. Is there a 7th night? No. Why is there no 7th night? Because Adam was created on the 6th day. If there's going to be a 6th night, what would happen? Adam and the humans will be gone. So actually, I want to give you that if I can. It is, I have it in the, I'm just going to show it to you, and you can look it up online. The 5 nights of paleontology. It's in my pictures, I think. And I want to show you this. Here, this one, it's a PDF. Let me share this with you. Where is it? You want to see, again, takes forever. Here we go. Okay? This is from National Geographic. Let me share it so that people online don't really miss this, because I want them to see it. Share screen, and here it is. Okay. These are the ages, the age of the Earth. You can see the logo of National Geographic on top. And here it is. I want you to look at this very small star here. What does it say? What does it say, this star? Mass extinction event. Okay? And then when you go down, count the stars with me. How many stars? 1. This is the extinction of dinosaurs. That's the 5th, the 6th night. What is this? Number 2, 3, 4, 5. Before that, let's go back to life. You have a primitive life in this one, and goes to a little bit more complicated life, and then you have a big destruction. And then this life continues a little bit, and then another destruction, then another kind of life, and a big destruction, another life, and a bigger destruction, and then the last one, 65 million years ago when the dinosaurs were extinct. How many? Are you following what I'm saying about how we define night and how we define day? Life appears. That's what the paleontologists have found. Life in the fossils appeared. There's a lot of life. One of them is something that's very baffling to the evolutionary scientists. They said something called the Cambrian explosion. They found a mountain in Canada that's filled with fossils all of a sudden. There's no precursors. There is nothing that actually they evolved from. All of a sudden there's a huge quarry of fossils in Canada, found by the first one who established the Smithsonian Museum. He's been traveling with his wife, and all of a sudden a rock came down, and he picked the rock, and he found a fossil in it. And then he started digging in this mountain. Tens of thousands of fossils recovered for creatures that had no precursors. They couldn't find anything before them. And they're trying to explain it until today. They don't know how to explain that all of this life appeared. That's why they call it Cambrian explosion of life. So you have 5 periods of destruction matching the 5 nights. Okay? But we had to first understand the language that the Bible is written in and the words, what it means, before we go into the science. If you just take people words, not examine yourself, you're going to be fooled. They will trick you. Okay? So I'm going to shut this one, stop sharing, and go back to our document. You can find, this is National Geographic, it's called National Geographic, The Age of the Earth, and you can get it from there. Let's share the document again. So there are 5 periods of darkness were attributed to global events like the snowball Earth, massive volcanic eruptions, and meteor collision. The last one was a meteor collision in Texas that set up a whole destruction. And by the way, when they describe paleontology, when they describe each of this, they said darkness. Earth was completely dark for maybe 1 million years, maybe for thousands of years. I don't know how many times, but it was completely dark. There was no air, no light coming down to Earth. A snowball means a mile thick snow covering the Earth. That's glaciers before the Ice Age. This is not the Ice Age. This is something much bigger than the Ice Age. Everything is a glaciated, very thick ice. And it actually kills all the life on Earth except very little creatures that would survive. Or the meteor that hit the Earth in Mexico, and there's a beautiful story about this, about finding, they call it the tombstone layer in the sediment. They have a layer of ash that covers all the fossils of dinosaurs. Almost no dinosaurs survived on top of this. And they said, what is this? They called the tombstone, means the tombstone of dinosaurs. It was discovered it's full of iridium. And iridium is an element that's not rich on Earth. It has to come from, so they said there has to be death from above. Dinosaurs. Let's go and study this before we stop this piece. The word dinosaur does not appear in the Bible, of course. Why would it appear? Because it was coined as a word when 1824. Nobody said the word dinosaur before 1824. Why? 148 years after the finding of a dinosaur tooth in England in 1676. So the first fossil of dinosaur that they could recognize, although the Chinese had known about it before, but the world didn't know about it, they called them dragons. That's why the Chinese is fond of dragons, because they have lots of ancient fossils they discovered about dinosaurs, and they were fascinated by them, but this is not transmitted to us. But the Western world knew about dinosaurs. 1676, they found a big tooth, and it was a wife of a doctor, and he studied anatomy and said, that doesn't sound like a tooth of any animal I know. Let me compare it. And he looked into his textbooks and found it looks like exactly the tooth of a lizard. A lizard. But it is like 1,000 times the size of a lizard. And he was like, wow, that has to be a huge lizard. So based on this, later in 148, they called dinosaurs terrible lizards. Saurus is a lizard. Dino is like dynamite. What does it mean? Terrible. Terrible lizard. Something scary. So they call it the terrible lizard. The Hebrew Bible used the word tannin. Actually, it's translated literally in the Arabic. If you read the Bible in the Arabic, it says at-tannanin al-azam, the great tannin. What does tannin mean in Hebrew? The word is coupled with gadol. Gadol means great. Kohen gadol means the great high priest, or the high priest, the great priest. Tannin gadol means the great tannin. What is tannin? If you translate it before this, I would call it dragon. That's why the Chinese called it dragon. What doesn't mean like a real animal. So let me just give you a little example. Why did not the Bible, the New King James that you have, write down dinosaurs? Basically because the word, when they translated the Bible from Hebrew, from the Masoretic, did not know the word dinosaur. What did they have other than dinosaur? They have other things. So these two words mean great monsters of sea or land. The King James Version, the origin of the New King James, was commissioned. They started working by King James in England, 1604. He paid the money and was finished 1611. This was 65 years before the discovery of the first dinosaur fossil. This might explain why the King James and its newer version, New King James, translated Tanin Hagadol to great whales. Why? Why do you think? Can you explain this? Because if they translated dragons, how would the person who read the Bible think of it? Let's say I read the Bible and say, oh, the Bible is talking about dragons now. What would you say? I personally would say this is a mythology. They're telling us fairy tales, like the stories of, scary to kids and stuff. There's no such thing. There's no dragons. I'm not aware of any dragon. But they were really existing. The ancient didn't know about them. Maybe Chinese did, but Moses wouldn't know about them. So they said, so if you put Gadol next to Tanin, it's a great monster. But you put Gadol, it's a great, great monster. Means huge, extremely big. And was done before the finding of fossils. The translation was done before the finding of the fossil. So they picked one of the weaker translation, whale, great whales. Oh, this will be accepted by people. Now it is not acceptable, but still have the translation. And translation didn't change. If you open the fifth day, it will say God created the birds and the sea creatures and great whales. That's not the translation. That's not correct. So the word used to describe ancient huge monsters would have been dragon. This would have made the Bible more of an ancient mythology rather than true facts to the readers of the early 17th century. Of note, the Arabic Van Dyck translation used the word great tanins in describing the same creatures. Dinosaurs are grouped with birds and sea creatures on the fifth day, which corresponds to the current scientific grouping of birds and dinosaurs. What do the scientist, the paleontologist says? You want to see dinosaurs today? You want to? Look at your chicken dish. These are dinosaurs because these are the descendants. The dinosaurs are the ancestors of the birds. Okay? All right. That's it. I'm going to stop here. What time is it now? 5 minutes. Okay. The fall I might need to keep for next time. I got excited about this word, the thing of if you have any questions, I think this would be a good time to ask questions. If anybody online or in here wants to ask a question, and then maybe we should do this next time. And I'm going to try to make a shorter version of the fourth one, so we can get over this. Any questions? Let's see if anybody online wants to ask a question.
What Bible version is Coptic Reader?
Say it again.
What Bible version is Coptic Reader?
It's New King James. New King James is Coptic Reader. And it is originally, if now you know, it is translated from what? I'll give you choices. The Septuagint, the Masoretic, the Vulgate. Vulgate? Septuagint? It is. What is the Hebrew version that we have into our current versions? We have Hebrew and Greeks and Latin, so Hebrew is the Masoretic. Why we call it Masoretic? Because the Masoretes, the scribes in the 6th to 10th century, had translated the available Bibles. They have the manuscripts into Hebrew. They combined them. They didn't translate them. They combined them into this, and they edited it and made it very detailed. But the translation from the Masoretic will be every Bible you have, except the Orthodox Study Bible and your Cantamaris, which are made of the Septuagint. Okay. I'm excited to do that. Yes. Yes. So you do it ahead of time, and that would serve to prepare you. And you have the material, you can read it, and you can answer from reading. Next time I'm going to go 3.3. We did 2 sections today. 3.3 is the fall, what happened in the fall, and we're going to have to look at it. Prepare yourself for the fall and maybe we can do that. It's not very long. Can we do that quickly? It's not really much, so I can finish today. Let me finish. It's not much. Yeah, that's fine. We can do it. So what really happened in the fall? In the creation of Eve, Adam was coached by God to make a choice. We talked about this before. God actually gave Adam the choice. He said, name the animals. When Adam started naming the animals, he found that the animals were families. And this highlighted what? His loneliness. Aloneness, not loneliness. Aloneness. Physically, he is alone. You can be alone but not lonely. You know the difference? To be alone but not lonely? There is a difference. You can be alone and completely happy. But loneliness is when you start feeling the tug, the need for another. So Adam felt the tug in his heart, and God put him to sleep, and he took a rib from him and made it into a woman. Why did he have to take a rib? Because Adam had to lose for Eve to gain. This is the rule. You want to love somebody, you have to lose. You want to have a relationship, you have to lose. It will be on your own expense. So, the serpent who apparently wanted to stop the coaching process of God. God is training Adam to choose what's good and what's not good, to be like him, and bringing up his children to be like him. This is like any family. You have a friend or somebody comes into the relationship between you and your child, and the child is coached against you. Have you seen that or heard about that happening? A lot. That's the devil, basically. He did not like the relationship between the children and their father. And he wanted to stop it by all means and very quickly before they become his real enemies. Because God is going to change, to train Adam and Eve to be like him. So in their judgments of good and evil, was interested in breaking the covenantal relationship. That's the target. He wants to cut that relationship. What is the relationship? There's two in this covenant. What is it? Adoption and marriage. He wants to cut both of them. He wants to break both of them. Okay? And the serpent targeted their nakedness as a tool. Nakedness is the target. I'm going to use their nakedness to turn them against God and turn them against each other. How is that going to happen? The serpent temptation was to have them first doubt God's intention. Listen to the words. Listen to this. The serpent said to Eve, God knows. Put 10 lines under God knows. He knows that the day you eat of the fruit of the tree of good and evil, knowledge of good and evil, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good from evil. What does it mean, he knows? When I say that, let's say, a friend of yours come and say, your father knows the day you take the keys of the car and you're 14 years old, you will be like him driving that car, you will feel like an adult. What do I mean? Why he doesn't want to give me the key and to be like him? Then he does not love me. He does not. And the worst thing is that does not trust me. I'm not really bad. I only be like him. I can be like him. So what's the big deal? So here he's saying God knows, the serpent says God knows, to make them doubt what? His love. What is love? Is the relationship that they have. To trust him anymore. He doesn't want them to trust him as a father. So when he says God knows, it means you should not trust this guy. He wants to control you. There's even more coming. Not yet. So when they ate, their eyes were opened. Now they can differentiate between good and evil, but not like what God wanted him to see. They see it from the other point of view, away from God. What the first thing they saw? Think about it. And I want you to put yourself in their places. God is the one who made me. And I look at myself, wow, look at that. He looked at the animals from God's point of view and found families, but now he's looking at the animals with a different eyes, that this guy doesn't really love me. Well, everybody has something to cover them. Cats have fur. Sheep has wool. Birds have feather. Even snakes have scales. What about me? You notice that humans, not like monkeys, have nothing to cover them. And all of a sudden he looks at himself and finds, oh boy, there is stuff that nobody should see. It looks ugly. It's very embarrassing. The serpent has a point. He made me, and I don't like what I am. I'm not good. I'm not perfect. So shameful. And he's looking at me all the time and not saying anything. As if you wake up in the morning, for some reason, I don't know what, maybe you got drunk or something. You're in the living room with other guests and you are completely naked. And here is your father and mother standing and smiling and talking. What would you say? The first thing you would do is you would scream, right? And run. Scream and run for your life. And all of a sudden you're going to feel like, I'm not at my home. Who are these? What are they doing here? They look like my father and mother. They're not. They cannot be. So this is exactly what happened. That he, the serpent, knew once they eat from the tree, they're going to be able to see what's right and what's not right, what's good and what's not good. It's like babies. They had known that. They had that innocent. All of a sudden, they're naked in the presence of all the animals who are covered, and God himself. Okay, you got the picture. All right. So that made them doubt God's intentions even more. The serpent succeeding in making them think outside the covenant with God and suspicious and fearful of him. Now, he's not our friend anymore. He's not our father. What happened to the covenant now? So God warned Adam, the day you eat of it, you shall surely die. What does that mean? When they ate and hid themselves from God, they lost their source of life and died spiritually, and physical death started working on them. They already separated themselves from God. To separate ourselves from God is death. It's death. That's why Jesus came and spoke about people in his time as dead. And even his disciples, he said, when I see you again in the resurrection, I am alive, shall live, means now you are dead. The answers of the couple to God's questions revealed self-preservation defensiveness. They want to preserve themselves. They want not to be harmed anymore. They became self-centered. They became aware they're alone, nobody to protect them. They need to protect themselves. So with this in mind, you can actually talk about God's response. The first family is separated from God, and each member is self-centered and afraid. Each has the ability to choose for themselves what will make them love each other. What would make a person who is self-centered love another person? Think about it. Now, Adam and Eve is able to make choices. They have the choice to make, oh, this looks good, this doesn't look good. And all that I care about is me now. I need to protect myself. If I don't protect myself, nobody else will seek to protect me. I don't trust anybody. So what would make a person love? This explains that when God is giving them those what we call punishments, he's not punishing them. What happened when, let me ask you this, and I ask this all the time. What happens if the birth of a baby to a selfish mother is painless? She doesn't have any, she gives birth to a baby like goes to the bathroom. What happens? You know what happens? I talked about this in one of the sermons a few Sundays ago. When the mother is so much concerned with herself, she strangulated the baby and threw him in the trash. It's real. There was no bonding. There's no bonding. So how would God force a mother to bond with her baby and to be interested in the baby? The only way in this new status of self-centeredness and of isolation from God is suffering. The thing that you suffer for becomes very valuable to you. Why? Because you put some of yourself into it. Do you get that? Like if you invest in something, if you put too much hours into studying, that test becomes an anxiety-provoking. You want to make good in that test because you have done a lot of work. If you don't care, you don't care. So God gave the woman to suffer for the baby so that the baby becomes very precious. And God gave the man to suffer for his family and sweat to work for them so that his family becomes precious. These were not punishments. These were medicine for the fall in nature. Once we said that, immediately what comes up? The cross. Once we say that suffering has to be coupled with love, love cannot be without suffering, then eventually, this is exactly what it is, that's the cross. Because this is how God loved the world. That he took it upon himself, that he would share our fate, that he got also to suffer to express love to us and to be in our life. So this is the beginning of the appearances or the significant manifestation of the cross, that for the case of knowing good and evil away from God and being selfish and self-centered. How do I know that the marriage covenant was broken, by the way? We know that the disobedience is broken, and separation and being ashamed of God broke the adoption. But what about the marriage? When Adam turned against Eve and said, I didn't do it, she did it. Well, she was. The woman that you have given me, instead of she was the bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh, I'm responsible for her. She's a piece of me. Now she is not. She's a woman. As if she's saying to God, you want to punish anybody? Take her. No, she. So you have the two covenants broken at the same moment, the adoption and the marriage. The best part in this is the proto-evangelion, and I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Beautifully put. Immediately, before anyone asks for it, God's giving a promise of salvation and even revenge. Because I know that this serpent had tricked you and took advantage of your innocence. Now, I skipped over a question that's very important. Why did God leave them naked? Anybody ask this question? Why did really God leave them naked? I'll tell you why. Because there is no instincts in the covenant. To be naked, the communication people, listen to this. Communication, the people who study communication, it says the highest level of communication is intimacy, intimate love. Intimacy cannot happen without nakedness. You see somebody in the streets, on the train station or the bus station, and you say, good morning, it's a good weather. That's called cliches. That's the first level of communication. Oh, did you hear? Tomorrow will be snow. Next piece of communication is exchanging information. The third piece is, I don't like Biden. That's called opinions. You're getting a little bit deeper now, right? And then the fourth step of communication is feelings. Now you open yourself to a friend and you say, I'm not happy, I'm sad. And the friend is supposed to say, what's wrong with you? What can I do? That's called the fourth one or the fifth one. The last one is sharing your weakness, the things you have done wrong. I remember with my best friends, I used to confess to them before I confessed to Abuna. I said, so-and-so, I've done terrible things today and I'm very ashamed. Oh, what happened? So I tell them, I'm comfortable. What does that mean? What does it mean to share your weaknesses with somebody? Is that you're so comfortable with them, you're not ashamed to say your weaknesses. What does that mean? You can be naked morally. So when God created the couple naked, what's he trying to do? He's facilitating what? Bonding, because that nakedness is on many levels, physical as well as moral and psychologically. So for the marriage to happen, the couple has to be naked. And for the bonding with God, it has to be naked. You cannot go to prayer, by the way, and you're hiding yourself from God. The first thing in a good prayer, in a really good, powerful prayer, is the knowledge of your weakness, the knowledge of your need, the poverty of the spirit. If you're protecting yourself from God in a prayer, it's not going to happen. So nakedness is a mandatory element in bonding, in intimacy. Tell me about the baby when his mother wants to clean him or feed him, that he doesn't want to expose himself or approach the breast of his mother. What would happen? Tell me about the husband and wife who wants to have a family and they don't want to be naked in front of each other. Tell me about the person who wants to be a saint and he doesn't expose himself to God. Tell me about that. Can it be happening? Can it be done? No, absolutely not. So it's mandatory. So it's a very strong point for a relationship in a covenant, but it can be turned into a vulnerability and weakness and be taken advantage against us, depending on what is going on. So communication says, the science of communication says, you need nakedness for a strong relationship to develop, for a bonding to happen, for a covenant to happen. But this nakedness also can turn against you and be a vulnerability. That's why when a person in a marriage, let me just give you this, in a marriage who had seen the spouse and seen all their weaknesses and seen all their good and bads, at one point come and turn against them and use that stuff against them. Or your friend who's told them your worst weaknesses, and all of a sudden you see them talking about it with somebody, what happens? Oh, I give them my secrets, my most intimate. It hurts so much that the person actually will break that marriage, break that friendship. I cannot trust them anymore. So that nakedness can be a strength for the relationship, but also can be what? A vulnerability that makes a person feel the worst in his life. So the proto-evangelion, God is promising. Proto-evangelion is answered so it is 3, remember, 3, is it 3:15? 3:15, I think this is a mistake. But the answer to that proto-evangelion is John 3:16. Just something to think about. What's John 3:16? For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. Cain and Abel, the last one, is the offering of Cain was not accepted, not because Cain did not offer it right. It is because his relationship with God and his family was awful. He was a self-centered, proud, arrogant, vile, aggressive person who wanted to offer God an offering, and his actions are really bad. And that's why God told him, it's very clear. He said, if you do well, wouldn't your offering be accepted? As if you have your enemy who talks about you very bad, comes to your birthday with a gift. Would you take it? And give them a kick after they turn around, right? That's the only thing. Would you take the gift from your enemy who speaks about you bad? And I would say he was belittling me. He's trying to make a fool out of me with a cold smile. No, I wouldn't take it. So what's what God said? I don't want your gift. Fix your relationship with your family and with me, and then you can offer a gift. Don't be a hypocrite. I'm not going to be a partner with you in this. Don't be making me and you a hypocrite. Fix your doings and come and do it. So this is the reason why Cain was not accepted. And God warned him before murdering his brother, and he became the first excommunicated person. I want you to remember that. Cain is the first excommunicated person in the Bible. What does it excommunicated mean? They are out of God's covenant. He is an enemy now. And this language is very clear when Eve speaks about Sis. When the name Sis means a replacement. What does Eve say? It's a replacement of Abel, whom Cain killed. This is a very interesting language. Analyze it. She's not calling Cain her son. She's calling the replacement is for my son, whom I had, my beloved son Abel, whom Cain, our enemy now, is a murderer. Yes?
So, God had a sacrifice for Adam and Eve when he got the stone from the garden, so he covered them with the skin again. And Abel gave him a sacrifice. But Cain did not give a sacrifice.
That's what the people usually say. But I want to tell you something. There's two offerings that still continue to be accepted in the time of Moses. There is a grain offering. There is a poor offering, the wine and the oil and the grain and the bread. So the two sacrifices are okay. I want to say something. Cain gave what he is a farmer doing, which is true. A farmer gives their first fruit. But he didn't choose it right, nor he had the attitude, nor he had the background to support his offering. I don't offer to God an offering and just say, take. I'm doing my job. As people come here and say, I'm going to give some money. I'm sleeping around and I abuse people and steal their money and everything's fine. That's not God's business. Or some people come to you and say, it's not Abuna's business to know what I'm doing. It's not his business. I'm going to do what I need to do. Let me just come to church and take communion, and that's it. I'm saved. And God is going to say this in the prophets. You're going to hear it over and over again. Don't do that. Don't do that. So this is a set of hypocrisy. Now I broke the line. Cain is no more a son of Adam. This is chapter 5. Cain is chapter 5. Adam and Eve, might be the opposite. Adam, Eve, and Abel and Seth is chapter 4, and Cain chapter 5 of the opposite. but they are separate now, separate genealogies. They're totally separate families. What happens to the genealogy of Cain at the end? What happens to them? Where? In the flood. There will be no more Cain family after the flood. All what you would have is this family, the line of Seth. I'm going to stop here. We'll continue next time. Let's say our Father. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, make us worthy of to say thank you, our Father who art in heaven. Hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. In Christ Jesus our Lord. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, now and forever. May the love of God the Father and grace of His only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you. Live in peace. Peace be with you.